On today's episode of The Intangibles, we'll be kicking things off as always with the play of the game. At 9 minutes and 56 seconds, we'll answer the question, what's in your disc golf bag? And finally, at 25 minutes and 8 seconds, we'll break down the 2022 MPO Disc Golf World Championship. Welcome to The Intangibles with Kenny and Leonard Peebley.
Hi, I'm Leonard.
I think that was your name from the morning wake-up show that we had previously.
I'll have to come up with a good Leonard voice.
Your voice was it was a very South Park voice you used last time. This is Leonard Peebley.
I just went full Cartman on it.
Yeah. Well, welcome everybody. This is The Intangibles, the Drop Zone. I decided to call it. Until further notice, the Drop Zone is what The Intangibles is, which is disc golf, all disc golf. We might throw in some different things. And the play of the game, of course, is an easy one that can be something other than disc golf. And I'm curious if you ventured out of disc golf territory this week.
Absolutely not. Poke chat, poke chat, poke chat, poke chat.
Okay, great. Well, let's hear it. What's your nomination? Play the game.
I like the drop zone too because it implies that we threw an out of bounds shot and had to go to a drop zone. So it feels like a very intangible player kind of thing to have to do. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, it also is. It's a good representation of the tangent this show has taken. As
yeah,
well.
Definitely. So my play of the game is actually very, very tangible this week, I would say. But I have to give it to this person because this is the first time it's ever happened to me, and I was so excited and grateful for it. So I played several weekends ago now, and I lost a disc when I was playing. I think we talked about it on the last episode, maybe even. I threw a forehand, and it was actually a decent shot. It ended up in some rough on the right side. I knew generally where it landed, but I searched and couldn't find it. Gave up on it, finished my round. That was that. But I got a text from a random number probably a week ago now, and they said, hey, I found your D model distance driver. Would you like to get it back? And of course I want it back. So we texted back and forth a little bit, and they offered to basically leave it hidden in a tree at the park when they were back last weekend. They sent me a pic and texted when they did that. So I promptly hopped in the car. I drove over there, sitting right where they left it, scooped it out of the tree, and now I have that disc back. So it was just very nice to have that actually work for once. I've lost other discs in the past, and this is the first time I've ever had anybody reach out about it. The person was an absolute mensch. I mean, they just texted, they scheduled the time to go drop it off. There was no anything weird or suspicious, no trying to get money out of me or anything like that. So I am very grateful to the random stranger whose name I do not know who returned my disc to me.
What an unnamed hero.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, what they did was very tangible. The intangible thing that I think is great from that play is the dead drop method of I'm going to leave it hidden in this spot so we never have to interact. That's perfect.
And I've seen that done online before, too. I've seen people talk about that. Because, any interaction like that, you don't necessarily know what you're getting into, and people don't necessarily want to meet up and that sort of thing. So I was definitely open to, suggestions, and this person I think was just going to play at the park that day, and so they dropped it off. They might have done it before because the tree that they found is right next to one of the tee pads, and it was just a perfect place for it. So I don't know if they'd already experienced this or they're that good, but either way, A++.
Interesting. Now you can check that spot every time you go, because if that's their go-to, maybe you'll get some free discs.
Yeah, there we go. I think that would be the exact way to get karma coming after my ass.
Yeah, that'd be an anti-play of the game.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I have an anti-play of the game for this week.
Oh, boy.
Real quick, the Disc Golf Pro Tour YouTube channel, after every tournament, promptly after every tournament, they post a video, 2 videos actually, one for the FPO and one for the MPO. That's so-and-so, a specific player's highlights from this weekend's tournament. And it's the winner of that tournament. They don't say this person won, but they do it every single time there's a tournament. And it's this is spoilers. I mean, I know you're not saying they won, but obviously they did. So I had the end of the tournament spoiled for me by Disc Golf Pro Tour.
Way to go, DGPT.
Yeah, awesome.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, so I've unsubscribed from them. So I don't want to see that, which is not a guarantee that it won't happen, because probably I watch so much disc golf, they're probably just going to keep recommending this stuff to me.
Yeah, it's tough to stay away from it all, especially on something that you literally can't watch live, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So Jomez did their live watch party of them doing their post-production of the last round.
Yes.
And I don't know if you heard this, but whoever did some of like the intro graphics put Paul Macbeth's 2022 title on there. So everyone who like held out and got away from spoilers to tune in and watch that particular round on post-production had it spoiled by Jomez basically when they started watching it, which is hilarious to me.
That is very funny. I mean, realistically, you're not going to avoid being spoiled. You're in a crowd of people, many of whom have seen it.
Yeah, it seems like a huge oversight on somebody's part, though. I can't imagine that was really, truly intentional.
No, I'm sure that was not a good time for that employee. Okay, my actual nomination for Play of the Game is a classic Matt Webb nomination. So let me...
so it's you.
Yes, exactly. But like slyly through the back door.
Right.
The Play of the Game is a very general, abstract one. It's the great play that nobody sees. So I experienced the other day on hole 14 in our course. This is from the shared tee location on the back nine. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Okay. I'm with you.
So this is on the back nine. So you're going to the long distance hole location in the corner. I had an early low release from the tee, so I just got past the flower bed, and so I'm about 100 feet away from the basket with the small crabapple tree right in my way, blocking my view. So the play I've been going for on this kind of shot is a massive spike hyzer around, because I want it to crash at the basket. It gives me some kind of chance to go in, but if I miss, it's not going to be too far away from the basket. So I pulled one of those and sank it from about 100 feet. Felt amazing, but I just did it, and then I just raised my hands, looked around. There's nobody, not even dogs or cats around to see this. So, it definitely takes something away from it. If I had done that while I was playing with you, for example, we would have been, losing our minds. Or at like the Webmill Invitational, that would have been the greatest play, And when you play a lot by yourself for practice, either in golf or in disc golf, you're going to get a lot of those. You're going to get a lot of great shots that only you get to see and enjoy, which has its own special thing, but it is quite intangible, I would say. And then I was mentioning this to Troy. I was saying this was going to be my play of the game this week, and he was telling a story. He's a very good disc golf player. He has yet to get an official hole-in-one, which it's only a matter of time for him because he always has great looks at it. But he was playing at one of his local courses and threw a really bad shank off the tee and said to his wife, "I'm going to throw another one," and he aced the second one.
Doesn't count.
Nope, doesn't count. He doesn't count it. I wouldn't count it, but it's like, that's awesome, but it hurts so bad.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my nomination. I want to give it to your random Good Samaritan, I think.
Yeah, it's just a heartwarming tale. I'm thinking about making a movie about it. Yours is like the intangible like pain that you're experiencing because of something great that you don't can really share with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I can say it. I also know I play enough on this course that we designed, just day to day. I'm gonna ace it eventually, get an ace, and it's like, it doesn't even count if nobody's there.
No one's going to be watching. Well, I feel like you play with family enough that there's a chance it'll be with people. We'll see.
Yeah, that's possible.
Save it up for the next invitational, man. Just don't do it until then.
Just don't play.
That's the key.
All right. Let us move on then to the frequently asked question. And this week we are doing a bag check. We are doing what are your go-to discs in your bag, and maybe we can just maybe alternate.
Sure.
You tell me about a disc, I'll tell you about a disc.
Sure, sounds great. I essentially picked one disc of kind of each type that I typically use.
That's what I did as well.
It kind of it's shown a light on the fact that I don't have many, and I don't really use often what are considered to be fairway drivers. I think that's a hole in my bag that I'll probably look to find something to fill at some point, because I basically don't have much in between, like 5 speeds and then 10 speeds. So I think there's some room for something there. But what I use today, I'm going to start with my putter. So I've talked about this disc a little bit in the past. I have a bunch of dynamic discs, EMAC Judges, that I use in the backyard for a lot of practice, just throwing in general. And they've kind of become my go-to putter at this point, because I've thrown them a lot. I'm familiar. Yep, exactly. There it is. That's actually not the EMAC version, which I don't know if there's a significant difference in them, in the mold or anything like that. They fly pretty much the same in my experience, but I've used them so much back here that I'm very comfortable with them for 200-foot shots or in. They feel good even with actual putting. So that's my go-to right now for putting. I think eventually I might buy one or two in some more premium plastic, because right now I just use the basic plastic. Again, I bought 2 5-packs for pretty cheap in order to.
You can really get away with that in putters, though, I feel. You're not hitting trees and poles and stuff like that.
Right, yeah, they're not getting too beat up, and yeah, as long as I have one that I kind of save off to the side that I use for putting, typically it works fine. But I could see potentially having a different grip feel of the plastic might be nice. So if I ever get a chance to feel some before I buy them, I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, I really want to go to an official, big, dedicated disc golf store at some point. That'd be really fun. Well,
when we go to Delwood, the Canyons at Delwood, they've got a big shop over there, so it would be a good opportunity.
Do that, go to Ledgestone.
Yeah, because that's Peoria, right?
Yeah. All right, my putter, as you know, is the Star AVR. Whenever I can get Star plastic, that's what I tend to go with. I think so much, you were talking about the putter, so much of it it's just comfort. All putters fly basically exactly the same. There's not too much difference between them. And so it's just what you get familiar with and comfortable with. For whatever reason, the really grippy plastic really speaks to me. I think part of that is just that's what I started with the FLX material, which I'll talk about in a bit. And this has that same really grippy, tacky feel. You can really feel it rip off the fingers. It makes me feel like I have a lot of control over the disc flight. AVR is super basic. It's what you get in all of the Innova starter packs, but I love it. Works for me.
It's a great disc. I used AVRs for a long time too. I assume
What made you change?
What made me change?
Yeah. Or did you just experiment?
So when I started getting back into it last year, I had kind of misplaced whatever discs. I didn't have that many anymore. I think I still had an AVR, but I think it was from a starter pack, and that's what I ended up having duplicates of. So they're 140, 145 grams. And putting with those was fine, but if you ever actually want to execute a throw with them, if you ever go full power on those, because they're so lightweight, it gets pretty wonky. So
Gotcha.
I actually got a mystery box last year when I was getting back into
That's
it
right.
that had a couple of putters in it. It had a Discmania putter as well as some other brand that I don't even remember what it is, but they were heavier. I started using those quite a bit, and then really I moved to the Judge fairly recently when I started practicing a lot more, and again, I've started throwing them so much that I've just kind of grown to really like them.
Gotcha. That's cool. All right, what do you got next?
All right, so for my mid-range, this was kind of tough because there's 2 that I really do like in my bag, but I'm actually going to go with the Axiom Paradox. So this is a
mystery disc as well.
It was, yeah. It's a very understable mid-range, so it's a 5-speed with a -4 on the high-speed turn and then a 0 on the fade. And I would say those numbers are relatively accurate. when I wasn't really throwing a forehand, this disc was huge for me because I could put it on turnover lines and get it to fade left to right. Whereas, with an overstable disc, it's always going to fight back out of that. So it's a fun one to throw, and it's been good for learning hyzer flips, essentially, learning what a hyzer flip is and kind of how to execute that. Because again, it is very understable. So even when you throw it at full speed at a big hyzer angle, it'll tend to flip up and turn over. And if you've got enough distance in front of you, you can throw it high enough, you can get the full, kind of S flight out of it. So it's been a fun one and has been very useful for me.
Very nice. Also, great paint job on that bad boy.
Yeah, it's pretty sharp. It is green, so I haven't lost it in the grass yet, but we'll see.
That's always a possibility, though.
Yep.
You know what my mid-range is.
Oh, yeah. Ow!
Ow, ow, ow! The Star Coyote. One of the very first discs I had. It was a gift from a friend. You can still see his name on the inside. Thank you, Fish. And yeah, this is what kind of got me on the Star material, the grippiness of it, the durability. This disc is almost in pristine condition, even though I got it in 2006 from a person who owned it previous to me. And, typically I don't give my favorite discs that I just bought to people that I, am recent new friends with. So I imagine this was a fairly old disc at the time. So, pretty awesome. I love this disc. It flies super straight. I don't know, just a very even, reliable disc. And I've thrown it so much, I feel so comfortable on it. I already know if something ever happened to this, I know what I would do. I would get the Mako 3 because I've thrown those and they feel very, very similar. I think they took the Coyote and made some slight tweaks to it, and I think that's how they got the Mako.
I would definitely agree. That was the other mid that was in my head when I was going through, was the Mako 3. And I definitely agree. It's a very straight flyer. So hopefully you never get there. You have the Coyote for the rest of your life, but
that would be the best. All right, we get to some driver action now.
Yep. Yeah, and you'll recognize this one. This is my Discraft Thrasher.
Oh, yeah.
This was one that came in kind of like a starter pack, but it is the right weight. It's 174 grams. It's their Z plastic, which I had to look this up because I wasn't super familiar with, kind of how their plastics went up and down. Their Z is kind of right in the middle. It's pretty durable. It's a little bit slicker than, it's not their grippiest. It's not like the ESP or the Flex, which is their grippiest plastic. But I like the feel of it pretty good. I haven't felt the need for a different plastic at this point. It's an understable distance driver. It's a 12 speed, which I think is pretty much topping out what I can realistically throw.
Pretty fast.
Yeah, but when I toss this thing, I can get it to hyzer if that's what I want to do, or I can get it to start turning right and come back left at the end. It's just been a really good, fairly straight flyer when it comes down to it. So I've enjoyed it a lot. It's become kind of my go-to for my longer distance shots.
Very nice. I also have one that I've grown into fairly recently. This year I really started doing it for my stable backhand driver, and that is the Star T-Bird. I originally got this when I first lost my my favorite forehand driver. I was looking for advice on what are some other good forehand drivers people liked. And some people were saying they liked the T-Bird. And so I got it for that reason. And I do like it. However, I eventually went to start throwing this for backhand because the one I had wasn't really working for me. And this has really worked a treat. I've gotten a lot more distance. And I think ultimately it just comes down to something that you shared with me, which is that this is a lower speed. It's a 7 speed. And I can actually generate speeds approaching that. Whereas with the real big, bomby drivers, they're like you're saying 12, 13, whatever. So yeah, love this disc. It's actually made it so that I'm not just afraid to throw backhands.
I like it. Yeah, and that is exactly the kind of disc that I'm talking about wanting to add into my bag. It fills that kind of spot between mid-ranges and then those really high-speed discs. So you can still get good distance out of it, but hopefully have a little more control with it.
More reliably spin it up to the speed you need.
Yep.
All right. Next.
That's all I got for discs.
Oh, I got some more. I've got 2 more discs.
Okay.
Share. The GOAT, the FLX Surge. They don't make these anymore, as I've said on previous podcasts. This is what I first got when I realized I wanted to focus on forehand. It's what kind of got me, this and the Star Coyote got me on that grippy material, so I get that whenever I can in a disc. As the Flex name suggests, it is very flexible, which is kind of gimmicky. The idea was that it's very difficult to destroy these because they'll flex when they hit something. I just love the grip, and I really like the way they fly. So now I have a few extra ones, thanks to Amber gifting them to me, finding them on eBay. It's my go-to forehand distance driver. And then finally, I have the Discraft Pulse. I have an ESP, which I've had since college. I don't bust this one out very often because I don't get the same distance on it. But it is a very overstable forehand driver for me. So if I have a relatively shorter distance and I need to move around an obstacle hard, then I bust this one out. And I still do use this on occasion. And it does a very particular job, but it does it well.
I actually have that exact same disc in my bag.
Yeah, it's great. What do you use it for?
So like you said, it's a very overstable. So kind of those same scenarios. I find it really good for higher wind conditions. It's not a very domey disc. It doesn't have a lot of glide to it, which it's not going to get as much distance, like you said, because of that. But it's also not going to be as impacted by left to right or right to left breezes when you're trying to get somewhere. So it's good for maintaining some level of control in adverse conditions.
Nice. Well, that's what's in our bag, baby. So don't ever ask again.
No, I'm sure it'll be ever-changing, for me at least. So
I feel pretty stable. I wouldn't mind experimenting with some more backhand drivers, because I'm curious right now what the top speed of disc I can throw is. Because the Nuke, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. The Nuke, I have one, but I just cannot spin that up to where it needs to be.
I've got another Axiom Discs 9-speed in my bag that I really just don't use very much. So next time we hang out, you'll have to toss it and see what you think of it.
Good idea.
I agree with that sentiment in general, though. Like, I would love to throw some different 8-9-speed discs and find what is comfortable.
Kind of figure out like what your line is on, like, oh, I can hit this speed, I can't hit this speed.
Right. Well, and even I just think it's a spot in my bag that I don't have. Like, it's a disc I could throw full power and take some distance off of it and have some control, which would be good. Like, the only one I really have in my bag that I use today is Dynamic Discs Felon, which is so overstable. It's useful for some very particular shots, but if I ever need to turn over or get it to fly straight, I mean, that's just not the disc for it.
It's your tilt light.
I imagine if I threw a tilt, I would be like, oh my god, this is so much worse than what I think it is. But that is, somewhat what it feels like coming out of the hand. It's like you could throw it on as much Anheuser as you want, and it will always flex back out of it.
Amazing. All right, well, we'll have to try that out. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll break down the World Championship. Hey, Amber.
Hey, Kenny.
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
If you were going to come up with a new color of magic, what color would it be, and what would the symbol be?
Mustard and a vape.
Ooh, nice. Good answer. One of many that you can hear if you listen to Red Mage, Blue Mage, our Magic the Gathering podcast that you can find on the Geekspective Network.
Yeah, we talk all sorts of fun stuff, like we design cards, and we make up cards that represent us, and we talk about us.
And we actually play against each other. So if you like watching YouTube videos and Twitch streams of people playing Magic, and you can't get enough and you're on your commute, you can just listen to us play Magic. It's fun.
So you could find that on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts now, and other major platforms. And also, we have it up on YouTube as well.
That's true. And you can tweet at us. We're at RedBlueMTG. We hope to see you there. Wink!
Oh, let's break it down! Why are you so angry?
Okay, PDGA Pro World Championship, or Worlds as it's also known. We'll start with the format. This is a major. It's 5 rounds, and that's one of the unique things about it, is that most of the tournaments you're going to watch are 3 or 4 rounds. This one is 5, so it's more of a marathon, and it's played across 2 different courses. It's not played at the same site every year. It's a rotating thing. Or I don't even think rotating. They just go to a different site every year. This year we are in Emporia, Kansas, where we've already been once before. The DDO, Dynamic Discs, was there. Because that's what they're based out of, right?
Yep.
So we've already seen it. Last time we were there was hurricane force winds for most of the tournament. It was quite a bit better as far as wind conditions, although wind is always going to be a factor at this course, it seems. So yeah, that's the basic format, unless you have anything you want to add to the overall picture here.
No, I don't really have anything to add to that. How do you feel about 5 rounds at 2 courses being the format for a world championship?
So I have this in my notes, and I guess we can just approach it here, because this is a bigger question just about worlds in general. Mm-hmm. I was listening to some podcasts, some discussions. I think I even might have brought this up previously about like what makes worlds, mm-hmm. and what should worlds be. Because in ye olden days, it was basically the sport was not as organized as it is today. People played in their own local tournaments, like East Coast, West Coast, the South, whatever. And then Worlds was called Worlds because it's the one tournament that everybody went to. Mm-hmm. And that's what made it feel special, is that, sure, you had these great players over here in California, over here in Virginia, and the Carolinas, in Texas, wherever. But then Worlds was all those players got together, and it felt like you were kind of settling who's the best of the best right now. But now everybody goes to all of the big tournaments, and Worlds just feels like another big tournament, just like any other. And there's nothing that leads into it as far as, like, you know, points going into it don't matter. It's not like you have to qualify for it with some other tournaments or anything like that. It's just another tournament. And so for me, playing 5 rounds as opposed to 4 just doesn't feel that different. I don't know. What do you think?
I like making it a little bit more of a marathon. Like, I do think that if it was just a 3-round tournament, it wouldn't feel sufficient, right? It wouldn't feel like it was enough.
Yeah, I agree.
And I agree with everything else you said about it being a little bit different now than it used to be. Ultimately, I wonder if someday there will be some sort of points system throughout the season, to give you, like, basically to give you some value out of those other wins against the field when you're playing. I think,
and that's one of the. Oh, sorry.
The only other thing I was going to say is, like, I think 5 rounds is a good idea. It's a lot of disc golf when it comes down to it. So it does show that you can be consistent over a pretty long period of time. And I like
full week, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I do like the 2 course idea, and when they do it right. And I think the past 2 years they've done it fairly well. I don't really like Emporia Country Club as a course. It's not that interesting to me. There's a few holes that are fun, but overall I don't love it that much. But Jones Park Supreme was a pretty interesting course and was more fun to watch for sure. But when they do 2 different courses that require different skill sets, I think that helps out. You know, it forces you to be able to play all of the different ways rather than kind of being biased towards one particular player's play style.
Yeah, it tests you as an overall player. And that was one suggestion I heard, is to, like, either have a reliable place where that is the case. You have these 2 different play styles. wooded, closed, careful controlled shots, and then bomby distance going over water hazards and out of bounds and stuff like that. And then the other idea I heard was to do something like in ball golf, the FedEx Cup, of you keep track of points over the season, and then you end with Worlds, and the top X players get X stroke advantage going into the tournament. So the best player, for example, the highest score, you start at 10 under. So you have this big advantage going into it. You still have to play well. You can throw that lead, but it feels like all that work led into something and made it more likely that the best, most consistent player is going to win, which I think would be a good idea. Because they were saying, this is getting a little bit into the actual Worlds tournament that happened this year. Aaron Gossage made an incredible run. Not a big player on my radar, certainly, going into it. Played very well. Didn't wind up winning, but the Grip Lock podcast boys were saying they would have been upset if he won. Not because he didn't deserve to win that tournament, but because he would then be known as a world champion, when really this tournament's just not different than any other major tournament. So why should he be called the world champion, other than we just call this Worlds?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I certainly wouldn't have been upset to watch the Mustache Man take it home.
I was rooting for him. I legit was.
And he was solid the whole week. But that all does make sense still. It's like Eagle McMahon this year, who's played a handful of tournaments because of various reasons. He's obviously played well out of his mind at the European Open and well at the other tournaments, but there's something to be said for Paul finishing top 5 or top 10 at every tournament he's been in, basically. So I do think ultimately some sort of point system like the FedEx Cup would be good. And it might show some other holes in how much disparity there is in the field. I don't really know.
Yeah.
It probably would take some refining, but I think it would be better than how it's set up today.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, so I guess we can just get into it. I guess I shouldn't assume, we're going to be talking mostly about MPO.
That was my plan. I have not actually been able to watch the FPO at this point. I followed kind of the storylines and would love to talk about Kristen Tatar's win, but I can't really speak to the actual play for that tournament at this point.
I can too a bit, but we can save that because I definitely devoted most of my stuff to the MPO. Okay, so MPO key players. We've already mentioned him, Aaron Gossage. I think first time I've ever seen him on coverage, or ever, being as I just started watching this year. He was poised to be the lowest ranked player to ever win Worlds if he had pulled it off, which he was very close to doing. He was averaging 10 under every round with extremely consistent play. And I forget how many rounds he played. He played 3 rounds with exactly 10 under, something like that.
I think that's right.
He has a monster forehand, so I was enjoying that quite a bit. Mm-hmm. He went into the final round with a 3-stroke lead over second place, so he's pretty advantaged there. And as you said, the mustache. How would you rate the mustache overall?
I mean, that's a 10 out of 10 mustache. It's exactly what you're looking for in a mustache. There's all sorts of memes throughout the entire tournament about basically about him being Ron Swanson.
And he does, with the furrowed brows really add to that. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
There's a lot of side-by-side pictures or Photoshop pictures where it's I can definitely see that.
I was watching some of the tournament with Troy and Aaron, and they were commenting saying they couldn't decide if he looked more like a 70s baseball player or a modern day NASCAR driver. But Ron Swanson is actually really on point, I think.
Yeah. A man of culture either way, whether he's a NASCAR driver or a 70s baseball player.
For sure. We also mentioned Paul Macbeth. He was in the running, as always. He's always seems like he's hanging out on or near the lead card. He was fighting through some injuries during this tournament. It seemed like some sort of leg injury.
I think it was some sort of cramping or something going on. It seemed to be happening just in the last 2 rounds from what I saw. And it was worse in the 4th round than it was in the final round. But he did comment on it. He did mention that he was straddle putting because he wasn't able to get kind of the power out of that leg, or he wasn't able to really trust it. So he was going to a straddle putt to just try to take that out of play, which it worked out for him.
Although, it's kind of mixed results if you just watched his play. This was definitely not like the McBattle from the European Open, where people are just shooting lights out. There was plenty of messy play from Macbeth in the tournament.
Yep. I was just going to say there absolutely was some messy play, but in a good Worlds tournament fashion, it got very exciting at the end.
It did. The other big players, these are the other people on the lead card at the end. Calvin Heimberg, he's also like Macbeth, like the guy who consistently is on or fighting for the lead card. I have a question about this because Troy is a huge Calvin Heimberg fan, but he has a theory about him, is that coverage really gets in his head. He plays super well, and then it seems like he gets, this is Troy talking, not me, he gets on the lead card and chokes consistently. What do you think of that? You've watched, obviously, a lot more than I have.
I haven't noticed that as much, and I wanted to look up his wins this year, because he's definitely won. He won the Great Lakes Open this year.
He did.
So he would have been, obviously, on coverage for that. And I want to say he's been in the top 10 in, like, almost everything he's played. So,
like I say, he's next to Paul Macbeth. I think he's one of the most consistent dudes.
Well, I wonder if it's not so much the television coverage, but maybe it's crowds. You know, it's some of these bigger tournaments where they get big turnouts of people watching you. Maybe that pressure gets to him and not the cameras. Either way, it doesn't get to him that much, is what I'll say. He still puts out pretty consistent results. He's still rated near the top, I think, the top 3 of players this year in the MPO. So,
yep. And then rounding out the lead card for the final round, Matt Oram. It was awesome to see him on the lead card. I really haven't seen a lot of him since I started watching, and I know he's popular. And watching him in the final round this time made me see why people enjoy watching him. He is so goddamn entertaining.
He's got a great energy. He obviously has fun while he's playing. Like watching his reactions when he makes big shots is awesome.
Which he did plenty of in this round.
He's just a funny guy. So I agree. It's fun to watch him. His throw is very unique to watch too. It's a very kind of crisp, clean release that he has, and it almost feels like he's really spinning the disc out of his hand when he's tossing it. It's cool to watch.
And his putt is very awkward looking.
Kind of moving his disc around, like really
right, and like really curling it into his chest. Yeah. I love that. And then we had a big collection of other names in the running chasing. We had Chris Clemens, Anthony Barella, Fat Tony, Ryan Wysocki, Tristan Tanner, making moves, making plays.
Yeah, I wanted to point out Tristan Tanner for sure, because he had a really great start to the tournament. He's another big forehand thrower. I mean, he can really chuck that thing forehand.
Yeah.
So watching him and Gossage play on the same card was a lot of fun. And yeah, he would have also been the youngest to win this if he had, played well all through the round. So he's I imagine we'll see a lot more of him in the coming years.
Kind of going back to your point a little bit in the conversation about Worlds and the format that they use, the fact that it's just one tournament that you play can make a big difference, because from what I've heard, these two courses combined are like very favorable forehand courses. So you see Aaron Gossage, who has a really powerful forehand. As you said, Tristan Tanner, great forehand. Nate Sexton also played really well this tournament, has a really good forehand.
Yeah.
Chris Clemens played really well, but he's a lefty, so he kind of gets the same advantages. So it's kind of weird when it's all the eggs in this one tournament basket. If there's something unique about that course, it can really skew the results. potentially.
I hadn't really thought about it being a forehand line dominant course, but just, the way you phrase that with all those names who are at the top who would throw that way. It sounds like the data is there, right?
Yeah, definitely. So in this tournament, for rounds 1 through 4, to me, it really just felt like the Aaron Gossage Cinderella story when you were watching it. He felt super in control, very consistent, didn't make mistakes, and I don't know what the numbers are here, but his the times he parked it, I feel like he barely had to putt through most of the rounds in this tournament.
Yeah, I think that's true, and then, that could also lead into some of what we saw at the end of the last round, right? I mean, there was a pretty big putt towards the end of that round that he missed that kind of pushed things forward, so...
Yeah. I don't know how you want to do this. Do you want to do like an overall view? I have my notes here sort of in chronological order in the final round. I've
got notes from the final round that really don't even start until hole 16, basically. End of hole 15, start of 16.
That's fine. I can give like a broad overview leading up to it. Early on, I don't know if it's nerves or what's going on, but Aaron Gossage misses a few early putts and gives some ground to Paul Macbeth, who's in second place, to get up near him. Then he seems to even out, and we get just a very tight race going into the final few holes.
Yep, and I agree with that. I think they were really the only two throughout the day that were in contention, like really, truly. The other guys were enough strokes behind pretty much the whole time that it never really looked like somebody else was going to take over. Through hole number 15, Gossage still had the lead by 1 stroke. He was 45 under total. Macbeth was 44 under. 16 is the island hole. It's the island hole. It's kind of iconic on the Emporia Country Club course. And he misses he lands it on the island, but he misses a birdie putt on 16.
Gossage does,
yep. And that is the opening that Macbeth needs. Macbeth also landed the island, and he sinks his birdie putt. So now it's a tie game after number 16.
Which was interesting on this hole. 2 things to note. Mm-hmm. One, Gossage threw a forehand on this hole, which was the first time he threw a forehand on it the entire tournament. So I don't know what that adjustment was, but he did hit the green.
Yeah.
And then he was closer to the pin than Paul was. No. I take it back, because he threw first. Gossage threw first on this one. And you're throwing, and the basket is right near the edge of the water. And so to me, that did feel like nerves, because he shorted it, hit the basket. Mm-hmm. And then Paul goes after him and just goes for it like full send. If he missed, he's probably in the water, and nails it. It felt like a big pivot point on this hole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then number 17, Macbeth drives first and actually has kind of not a very good drive on this hole. He leaves a pretty big opening, and Gossage absolutely kills his drive on number 17. Yeah. Just lays a perfect drive out there, so far ahead of anybody else on the card.
Yeah, they had this great thing, we can talk about the coverage later, where they, on many of the holes, will show you the whole layout from overhead and then the different drive locations relative to each other, which really is helpful because you don't totally get a sense of how far people are driving just watching from the ground level.
Yep. But Macbeth, on his shot number 2, has a pretty good shot. He gets not quite to circle 2, I wouldn't say. I mean, he was still a good bit out, but puttable.
He was about 70 feet out.
Yeah, but puttable for someone like Paul Macbeth. Gossage's approach is better than Paul's, but still not super
not
close.
Good from where he was.
Right, yeah, exactly. He's better than Paul, but still not a gimme putt by any means. He was probably in C2, wherever he was.
He's about 50 feet out.
So this leads to Macbeth absolutely crushing his 75-footer or whatever it was. The slow-mo of his, double fist pump after he sank that thing was awesome. And Aaron unfortunately missed his putt from a slightly closer distance. So he gave a stroke up to Paul, and now Paul is up by 1 going into the last hole.
Right. Now, bear in mind, as I said in my anti-play of the game, I knew who won this tournament. So, spoilers, Paul wins. So I assumed that this is it. It's over. Mm-hmm. He has a stroke lead. We're going into the 18th. Not so fast.
Yep. So
this is a 690-foot par 4 for the final hole.
Yeah. I don't have any specific notes on this other than the fact that Aaron is able to sink his putt and force a playoff on 18. So Paul didn't play this one super well. He pars it. Aaron's able to birdie it, and that pushes us to, for the second year in a row, a playoff finish for the Worlds.
Pretty crazy. I do want to go into detail on this hole because, like, this hole, the last round, it was such a fun back and forth of like Paul climbing up to meet Gossage hanging on for dear life, Paul getting that little bit of an edge, Gossage getting it back. It was such a fun yo-yo back and forth. And on this last one, you go over water into a landing zone, and then at dog legs, you can either throw through a window of trees or bang it up and around. Everyone had a pretty good first shot on this hole. Gossage then bullseyes his second throw, and he throws first. So Macbeth has a lot of pressure now. He has to birdie in order to win. But he shorts it a bit, so he has a big putt with the slope down away from the basket. So if he misses bad enough, he could easily roll away and lose, not just like force the overtime extra holes, but lose completely. So he left that big putt and then doinked it. And it doesn't roll away, so yeah, we go to overtime. We go to extra holes.
Yeah, and the extra holes were not that exciting. We go straight to number 16, so back to the island hole. And they basically would play 16, 17, 18 over and over again until somebody wins.
It makes sense to start at 16 because it's an easy one that's going to have a difference in strokes very easily.
Yep, and I think that is the intent. And yeah, it worked. Gossage missed the island on his throw, and Paul...
Just so close.
Yeah, yep, but just short. And Macbeth lands it on, lays it up, makes his par, and that's it.
I will say one extra wrinkle. So Gossage has to go to a landing zone from about, 100 feet away, 80 feet away, something like that. And he gave it a great run, which, of course, he's priced into just going for it. But he was quite close.
Oh, he buzzed the tower on that, definitely. Yeah, it went right past. It was chain height. It was a good-looking shot. And that would have made it very interesting if he sank that. Because then, yeah, Paul wouldn't have... He would have laid up and continued on to the next hole, potentially, or he could have gone for it to try to seal it with the...
I think he would have gone for a relatively safe bid.
I was going to say, he wouldn't want to get it in the water or out of bounds past the basket on accident. So, But alas, that's not what happened. Paul Macbeth wins his 6th world title, and yeah.
Pretty crazy.
It was a fun finish. I'm sure in his head, I'm reliving last year's finish where it was all but secured, and then Jesus Conrad comes out and makes his throw in and then beats him in the playoff.
Rips it away from him.
My goodness, yeah. So it probably felt really, really good for Paul this year to win it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. If he didn't, how do you come back from that psychologically? That sucks.
Yeah.
I guess you just sit on your piles of money.
Yeah, exactly. I really think, Paul never really showed that he had it until really the very end of this tournament. And there was just a couple of clutch putts that he was able to make that really, that 75-footer was needed for him to do this, So, it was close. He very easily could have lost this tournament.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking after the fact, if you had shown me a montage of Paul Macbeth's average play over the course of this tournament, I would be like, this is not a championship run. Mm-hmm. This is not a winning run at it. which just shows how kooky he is when he's like injured, missing putts, not playing to his normal potential. He still managed to hold on and win.
Yep. Yeah, he's got something in his mental game where he can turn stuff on when he needs to.
This is a good bridge into a question I have for you, because I've heard a lot of people say this about Paul Macbeth, and it's a bigger conversation than just Paul Macbeth. This is like a sports coverage thing in general. And I've heard a lot of people say, he just wanted it more than everybody else. She just wanted it more. They just wanted it more than everybody else. What do you think of that idea?
I don't think it's a wanting it more thing necessarily in my head. I don't think wanting something is what makes you get it. You know what I mean? I think he is able to convince himself every single shot, I can make this. I'm going to do what I intend to do with this shot. Doesn't matter what's happened before. He's able to sit there and know confidently, I am good at this, I can do this, and he executes that. I think it's more of a confidence thing, and that feeling that you can do what you're trying to do, that sets him apart. Like, we've all been there where we stand up with a disc in our hand and we got to look at something and we're like, this is not going to go well. This is not going to...
Knees weak, arms spaghetti.
And he is very good at shoving that. I mean, maybe he just doesn't have that portion of him, you know what I mean? Like, maybe he's not like us and he doesn't think that way at all. And he's always just confident. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to throw it. I'm going to execute. And he does it.
Yeah. I think he also... I think we mentioned this at the very beginning of this season because I didn't know any of these people beforehand. These are all new characters to me. And his thing, when I was first introduced to Paul Macbeth, is he's a 5-time world champion. And he just doesn't give a shit. Like, he really doesn't have that much to prove to anybody. He just wants the biggest titles. So he will go for the ridiculous putts. He will go for it. Like that on hole 16, going for that big putt where if you miss it, you're in the water and you're done. It's over. And he just goes for it. And it looks like he's just playing in his backyard, So, yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a matter of wanting, because which of these people do not want to win the world championship?
Right. Yep.
Like, desire is not the issue. But grit, I think, and like you're saying, a super strong, super tight mental game, that is something that does make a difference.
Yep, absolutely.
Dang. Yeah. Well, that's all I've got on the tournament itself. I did have one last thing to discuss if you're into it.
Yeah, hit me. Oh, wait, before we get into that, I wanted to also just make an honorable mention. So Aaron Gossage played in the mixed doubles tournament, which happened prior to the actual MPO and FPO tournaments. Second place in the mixed doubles tournament as well. Second place to Calvin Heimberg, and I forget who he was playing with, but lost by 1 stroke in the mixed doubles tournament prior to losing to Paul in the MPO.
Always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
He had such a great tournament, so close in both, and I'm sure he's still very happy and excited with that. I know I would be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said at the beginning, he was poised to be the lowest ranked player to ever win Worlds, and I don't remember what his last 5 finishes were, but it's like something like, just rattling off random numbers, this is not what he got, but like 16, 48, 72, 23. It's like... And then to finish, second place, like you're saying, in both these tournaments, pretty nuts.
Yep.
And over 5 rounds. One thing I wanted to come back to as well, the Grip Block podcast, when they said they would have been upset if Aaron Gossage had won, what they clarified, they would be upset with him having that world title. They said if he won, he would have totally deserved to win this tournament because he turned in 5 incredible rounds. Yeah. So just not to throw any shade at Grip Block.
Oh, yeah.
That's not what they were saying.
For sure. And I mean, it makes sense what they're saying. They have more of a problem with the fact that the world title is tied to one tournament than anything else. So I get that.
Right. Exactly. My last thing was the Jomez coverage for this tournament. You mentioned the live day after for the final round. I was worried going into that it was going to be really cheesy. They were going to be hamming it up for the crowd, and that was going to be really distracting. But it really just didn't feel that much different watching it than any of their other coverage. So gets my approval. I like that.
Yep, I agree with that. They had some audio problems with Paul's mic, it seemed like, but you could still hear him, and it was totally fine.
Yep. And that's something they'll smooth out. I assume this is something they're going to want to do more of in future.
I'd be curious, like, what the people who actually were there in person thought of it. You know, like, if they weren't hamming it up, was it actually an enjoyable experience? Or would you rather just sit at home and watch it the next day like normal, you know?
I would say, for me, if I can make a completely tangential comparison, I love actual play D&D podcasts. I love Acquisitions Incorporated. It's how I really got into D&D. And they do all kinds of live shows, and they do really ham it up. And I don't like watching their live shows on VOD. Because it's not the same experience. It's not like I want exactly the same thing, but I want what I normally sign up for. And then the advantage is I get to see it live, and then afterwards I get to interact with these cool people. So I like this approach. This works for me very well. I mean, after all, this is golf, not a... What does Shooter say?
I don't recall.
It's golf. I want to say not a rave, but that's not what he says. Not a rock concert. God damn it. You looking it up?
Yeah, rock concert. As he kicks the beach ball away.
Yeah. They did some other stuff. I said they had those overhead shots of the holes showing the relative drive distances. I hope they keep doing that on all tournaments. That was actually really helpful.
Yeah, I have to assume for the big tournaments they'll keep doing it. I don't really know what kind of manpower that takes, but it was really cool. Like there was some there was some Calvin Heimberg drives that they showed with his card where it was like, oh my god, he outdrove those guys by 100 feet.
Yeah, and you get a sense of that. Like, I typically, when I realize somebody had a crazy drive, is when the camera guy has to whip around to follow it. It's like they were not even in the right position to accurately film this drive. But it's good to actually see the relative positions. And the last thing I really loved, they did a chase card check-in partnering with Gatekeeper. And I love that because I typically just watch the condensed day after coverage where you're watching just the title card, and them checking in on the chase behind them is so good. Like, it gives me such a better picture of the full scope of the tournament. Yeah,
I agree with that. And they've definitely done similar in the past, but not to the same depth that they did in this tournament. Like, they would show you, you know, two people from the chase card who are having a good day for like 3 or 4 holes, even kind of condensed down, so you can see, oh, this is how great their round's going at this point. You know, they are however many strokes down. You know, they're only so many strokes behind the actual leader, so it gave some more weight to the fact that there are other people who are chasing that title.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
What did you think of the Masters-esque kind of soft, dramatic music playing over lots of coverage?
That's funny because I asked that to Troy as well when we were watching, and he liked it. I didn't like it that much, to be honest.
I like their normal tunes, and I'm used to that. I get what they were going for. Like, I really think they were trying to mimic a ball golf kind of vibe where it was a little more serious, a little more weight to it. But it felt a little out of place for me.
I think disc golf is its own thing, and I love Joe Mez's their normal like whole preview music because it feels like such a nice balance of like bouncy, fun energy, but also like you're watching a serious sport. I think it strikes exactly the right balance for me personally. And so when they're playing this slow like orchestral piano soft music, I'm like, guys, we're hucking discs out here.
Yeah, that was my only other comment on the coverage. Otherwise, it was typical Joe Mez coverage, which is always good.
Is the best of the best.
Yeah, they definitely seem to have more cameras out there. They were getting some different views. Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed watching it. Enjoyed seeing some people who I didn't expect to be up there.
Yeah. Regardless of who you were rooting for, I want above all to have an exciting tournament, and this was a very exciting tournament and an awesome finish.
It's been kind of amazing how last year's Worlds was like that. This year's Worlds is like the European Open. Like, there's been some pretty cool finishes for a lot of the big tournaments, and that's not necessarily how it is going to go. So fun to see the level of competition that's out there.
For sure. All right. I think that is going to do it for us this week. Yeah.
Wrap it up. Ship it.
All right. Good. Get out of here. Bye.
Adios.